All right, I hope you're ready to move on. We are going to be talking about task lists. We're going to talk about transaction summary, and then how do you know if your task list is actually state specific? And then how do I process my first file? That's a lot to go through in an hour. So good luck to you. If you need to take little breaks, there'll be pretty obvious areas to take breaks. We're going to deal with task lists first. Then we're going to move on to transaction summary. In between there may be a good time to take a break. Okay, after transaction summary, we're going to move on to another section. Those are good areas for breaks. I wish you all the luck in the world. So don't forget to go down to go ahead and go back to the blog. You can go ahead and click on the appropriate. This is going to be the second outline. So when you grab that second outline, let's go ahead and pull that up right now. I'm going to do a quick reminder when we start that I believe to play transaction coordinator at the highest level, you need a minimum. Notice I keep saying the word minimum, a minimum of 3 systems. There are a couple other systems that I have that I would put on top of these that I think will even take you to another level, but bare minimum, you need to have a good dialed in transaction management system. Your task list, transaction summary sheets, those types of things that we're going to talk about are part of that. And then you're going to build systems based off of those and then put them in your tools. And then your tools are what you use to implement the system that you've designed. Again, transaction management system, email management system. We're going to talk a lot more about that at a later video, but it's a very unique and separate system from transaction management system and how 95% of your files are going to be handled probably. Number 3, a communication and relationship management system. Now, we have given examples of what that is in the previous video, so I won't do that here, and we're going to hit it on future videos as well. So let's dive into task lists. The first thing I want to point out about a task list is, what is it? Why do we even have it? What purpose does it serve? That almost sounds so obvious. We want to make sure we don't drop the ball. We want to make sure we got to make sure we know what we're doing. Got to make sure that you don't miss any items. Okay. Let's take one step farther back than that. Make it simpler than that. The fact is that you have to determine, I'm just going to use the example right now. If you are going to be a transaction coordinator, you're starting your own business. As a business owner, you have to decide what levels of service do I even want to provide? That's first. What levels of service do I want to provide? That's what happens before the task list. Now, once I know what are the levels of service that I want to provide, I'm going to build a task list that ensures 100%, not 95%, ensures 100% that the level of service that I have told my clients that I'm going to provide actually happens, and I have a system, very specific system designed to make sure that it happens exactly the way that I told them. So the first thing, understand what is the level of service I want to provide. Why is that such a big deal? It's actually a bigger deal than maybe we would give credit for because of the fact that you are talking about transaction management. There is no definition of a transaction coordinator, transaction management in the US. I can take 100 transaction coordinators and they all can provide different levels of service. Just because you're a TC doesn't mean you do this. Okay. I might have one TC that will write amendments when their agents ask them to. I have another TC that wouldn't dream of drafting up documents and amendments for their agents. Wouldn't dream of it. Who's right? Both of them. Absolutely both of them. Okay. So we have other TCs that at the end of closing would actually go into their agent's CRM, their database, where they are tracking their database management. And they will actually go into that agent's database and make sure that the client's contact information and tagging system and everything is updated, and it would take them 2 to 3 minutes to do it because they're so used to going in and out of there, verifying things, changing the status, making sure that the current address is correct because they just moved, everything else like that, and get out of there. You have another TC, wouldn't dream of doing that. There's not a chance under God's green earth you could get them to do that. Who's right? Both of them. So what is a task list? It doesn't start with the task list. It starts with what is the level of service that you're going to provide. The task list is there. It is there for the sole purpose to make sure everything that you said was going to happen actually happens. Okay, that's what the task list is for. So let's go ahead and go through this outline. Determine the level of service that you will commit to providing, period. Now, for you TCs, they're going to be a TC for an agent. Sometimes you're not determining anything. You're going to work for a TC or a brokerage or a group. And with that, they're actually going to give you a task list. And that's going to tell you the level of service that they are hiring you to provide for them. Now, just for fun, I'm going to stand up. I'm going to come around here. I'm going to shut my office door. We're going to keep going. We're that casual about making these videos, okay? We're going to have fun. So here's the deal is, what's the next thing? You need to create the task list that clearly defines these services. Now, how do you do that? Okay, now if you think about it, it's almost obvious, but what happens if you've never done this before? Where do you start? Are there any examples maybe that you could follow? Absolutely there are, okay? So if you've got any experience whatsoever, maybe you have actually worked in the mortgage business. Maybe you've actually worked in the title business. Maybe and I can go through a couple different businesses and go, you know what? In our industry, we also have task lists. I get it. I get it. Levels of service, my task list will make sure that I actually provide that level of service. But what if you have no experience whatsoever? Okay. In our homework, I'm going to give you links of where you can go for examples for that. But there's a couple examples is that I'll just show you right now real quick. I'm going to move my face down here. You could actually go to the toolkit, and in the toolkit, the TC 101 toolkit, there are two tabs here. C2PC task list. That is contract to post close. That's all that means. Nothing high tech here, okay? Contract to post close task list, okay? And there's an example of a task list here, and it's already broken into 5 stages. What happens when we go under contract or the opening phase? What happens when we go under inspection? What happens when there's an appraisal and financing and title and all those types of things? What happens in pre-close and what happens in post-close? Now, would I use this task list? Probably not. It's just an example. So let's go over to here. And what this is the same thing, but it's 4 task lists. Now, the one you just saw is right here. Then there's another example here, example 2 of 4. 3 of 4, and you can see how this is working here, okay? And what it is I actually went into the Google Drive. So now you know where I'm going next, okay? On the bottom of these task lists, again, there's multiple places where you can find the Google Drives and get to all the task lists that are available to you. But I simply went into the Google Drive and I grabbed 4 task lists. 4. Okay. And with those 4, all I did is I picked 4 that looked reasonable, but also looked kind of different. I did that on purpose. Okay. One that was kind of very detailed and one that was very, very basic. Okay. Now, both of them, it doesn't mean one provides better service than another. It just means that's how they drew out. That's their personality, okay, of how they drew out their task list. So what I did is I took each of those 4 task lists and I put them side by side. Doesn't mean these are the 4 best, just means these are 4 task lists, okay? You can pick out your own 4 and do this exact same exercise. You could actually, if you don't know how to do it, you can go right down to this spreadsheet, go down to the drop down arrow. This is not a spreadsheet tutorial, but you can go here and click duplicate. It will duplicate that page. Notice that it says copy. Then come in here and actually just delete these and do the same thing in the next section and the next section and the next section and start entering your 4 favorite task lists, or at least your 3 favorites, and then start choosing what do you like in this section that you want to put in yours? What do you like in this section that you want to put in yours? What do you like in this section? Okay. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to undo some of this. Okay. So let's go back to the outline. The fact is what I said, determine the level of service. That's where this starts. Then create a task list that clearly defines the services. How do you create a task list? In my opinion, what I would do if I'm new, I would go and I would either go to the TC 101 toolkit and I would use some of those task lists and see if any of them kind of resonate with me, if any of them have levels of service that I would like to provide, okay? And I would start to build my own based off of those examples, okay? The next thing that I would do is go to the Google Drive that we talked about. And by the way, you can find that in multiple places, but one place that you already know, because I just showed you, is at the bottom of this. There's a copy of how to get to that Google Drive. Okay. So it's right there for you. Now, and then I would start to play with different task lists and create a task list. We'll get more specific later, but that's a general concept. See what other successful people are already doing and consider, would that be something I consider doing in my business or my service? Okay. Don't make it any harder than that. The next thing, after you're creating that, and you may be doing this simultaneously, but I'm going to call it next thing. After you've created a task list, start to get very specific. Which of those tasks would you put in and would you consider phase one, which is the opening? You've got 100 tasks or 50 tasks. Which of those tasks do you think need to happen as you're processing a new file? The opening process is what I call it anyways, but you could also call it fully processing a new transaction. Okay, call it a couple different things. And what it would be is, what are all the tasks that I need to do to feel that I have fully processed that new transaction? What's the next phase? I call the next phase inspections. Why do I break inspections down to a separate phase? Because inspections, there may not be a lot that you do during inspections. Now, some TCs may do more than others, but there may not be a ton that you do during inspections. There's usually an inspection that happens. You may schedule it, you may not. Okay. There's reasons why I don't schedule it. It's usually because time is of the essence. And we can get into that at another time. But right now, it's okay to schedule it or not schedule it. Okay. And have your agreement with your agent as to who is scheduling that. Okay. I schedule most things. Actual inspections, though, I do not, that initial inspection. That's just personal preference, okay, because of time is of the essence. But let's just say that that was one task that you did or didn't do. But then the inspection comes back and there's negotiations that go back and forth. Once those negotiations go back and forth, which I don't handle negotiations, the agent handles negotiations. You can draft documents, you cannot draft documents. So one TC then is going to draft the amendment, the inspection amendment. Another TC will not. Now, even the one that does is going to send it out for signatures. The one that doesn't may actually not draft it, but maybe the one that sends it out for signatures. So you have to know what your level of service is going to be, and those tasks may look different for different TCs. But why do I break it into a separate section? And that's because of this. After inspections, sometimes things work out great and we just move forward. Other times it doesn't go so great. And we can't come to an agreement on the inspection between the buyer and seller. So we end up with a cancellation. And because of that, it's its own section, because sometimes that's where it ends. We're done. Okay. And now we just need to, depending on what you do as a TC, then I would close that file out. And there's certain things that I would do. We can talk at another stage about that. But just know that sometimes it doesn't move forward beyond that. So then what's the next stage? Okay, we got past inspection. We're moving forward. The next stage or phase, whatever you want to call it, for me, is going to end up being what I call title and finance. Okay, so that's where, like, and I'm just going to use finance as an example right now. A lot of times the finance doesn't want to do, or the mortgage company doesn't want to do a lot until they know the inspection is done. Why? Because a lot of what they do is going to cost them money. So ordering an appraisal, that might actually cost them money. They don't want to actually order that appraisal and even get it on the books until they know that we are not going to cancel. So a lot of times after the inspection, that's when a lot of the title and a lot of the finance happens. And so I call that my title and finance stage. The fourth stage or phase I call pre-closing. Those are the things that I typically follow up on either 5 to 7 or 7 to 10 days prior to closing. Okay. And I can give some examples on that, but let's move past that for right now. There's pre-close, 5 to 7 days or 7 to 10 days, depends on if the market is fast or slow at that time. That's pre-close. And then there's post-close. Once it's closed, what are the couple activities that I need to do to make sure that everybody gets paid and we have compliant and closed out files? Okay. Now that may look different for many TCs, such as at the end of the file, some TCs may actually go into their agent's CRM or their database, whatever tool they're using, and they may update that database to make sure that the current address has been updated because they moved and that they're categorized properly and those types of things. Why would a TC do that? Because the database, as people say, is the agent's gold mine. okay? It's their gold mine. It's their future business. It's how they get referrals. It's how they get repeat customers, all that kind of stuff. Well, if it's the agent's future business, isn't it your future business? So some TCs are very particular. They want to own that. Who's some of those TCs? You're looking at one, okay? Now, I would say I'm rare. A lot of TCs, they have no desire to go into the agent's database. That's up to the agent to update and maintain their own database. That's okay. Who's right, me or them? Neither. Okay, both of them are just fine. It's just I'm a little retentive and I want to make sure it's done. And I want to make sure that their database is as clean and accurate as possible because I'm banking on them doing the best that they can with their existing database from a marketing perspective. And that's the best chance that they have at a referral or future customers. And I want to be a part of that. So that's just my preference. I'm not telling you to do it. I'm just telling you, I'm trying to show you that there are different things that people will do post-closing. Okay. That would be one of them. What's another one? Some people will have a task to leave testimonials. Some won't. Okay. But most of us will have tasks such as making sure that the compliance file everything is compliant, everything's okay, everybody's getting paid, commissions are correct, blah, 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 blah. Okay. So there's a bunch of tasks like that. Now, we talked about determine levels of service. Build a task list. How do you build a task list? Start using some other examples. Okay. You can find those in the TC 101 toolkit, or you can find those in the Google Drive. Pretty simple. Then once you've created that task list, which you can just do on a sheet of paper, you can type it up in a Word doc, but you also can go right to your TC 101 or virtual whiteboard and actually use those tools. And they're already broken out into these 5 phases or stages and start building it out in there and look at every single task. And even if you're brand new, and I mean, literally, you've never processed a single file, my guess is if you looked at every task, you'd probably be, if not 100%, 85, 90, 95% accurate if you look through the task list and go, this task, it makes sense that that's one of the phase 1 or opening process. That's part of the inspection. That's part of this. I bet you could start breaking that list down into the 5 phases. So that's what I would do. Levels of service, start building your task list, break it down into those 5 categories. The next thing, now this is me personally, how I look at it. If I have a task list, I'm going to call it 100 tasks. I could do 50, 100, doesn't matter. Let's just use 100, it's a round number. If I have 100 tasks, they are not all created equal. They're just not. Okay, never have been, never will be. Okay, they are not created equal. So here's what I'm looking for. I've got tasks and I have key tasks. That's a key task. So how do I distinguish the difference between the two? This isn't rocket science. A key task is something where if it doesn't happen, we don't close. Plain and simple. Versus if it doesn't happen, our level of service is a little lower, but we can still close. So what are those examples? Appraisals. Appraisal comes in at value with no work order. That's what I need. Okay. If it comes in low, comes in with work orders, we still got work to do. Otherwise, we can't close on that. It needs to come in at value with no work orders at some point. Okay. Even if it has to be revised multiple times, whatever. Hopefully it comes in right the first time. Okay. But add value with no work order. And when it hits no value with no work order, that's a key moment. Okay. Ordering the appraisal, not a key moment. Appraisal happened, not a key moment. Okay. It coming back with the results at value with no work orders, that's a key moment. Okay. Then there's tasks such as a utility list. Okay. So a seller usually has certain utilities that they're using for cable, for sanitation, for electrical, blah, 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 gas, whatever it is. And ideally, we would like to get a list of all the current utilities that they are using and what company they're using, what is the contact information. We'd like to provide that list to the buyer. Now, that's ideal. And we get it 95% of the time. Okay, like say we get it 100% of the time. Doesn't always happen though. Okay, but if it doesn't happen, can I close? Yeah, I can. It's just a task. It does provide better levels of service to all parties, but I will tell you, if it doesn't happen, nobody's dying. Okay, this is a key moment. This is not. This is a key task. This is not. So here's what I'm going to tell you about that. I would then go through in anything that I consider a key moment. I then take that task, the way that I label it, and it's all in capitals. I want to distinguish the difference between a task and a key task. Now, I'm going to do one more phase of this. Let's use appraisals. Now, when you go to TC 101, notice this task, there's a lot of items here, okay, in this first column, column A. There's a lot of items there. Now, when I come over here to this task list, it seems like there's less items and there's also less detail to them. Okay, doesn't mean that one's doing more or less than the other. So let's use appraisals as examples. Okay, we're going to go back to the worksheet. Appraisals. I'm going to have one task list where someone just lists out appraisal. What does that mean to them? That means that they have to follow up and make sure that we are at value with no work order. That is their task. For me, my task is going to be 5 tasks. Now, does that mean that I'm doing more than them? No, not in any way, shape, or form, but it means my task list looks different. Okay. So now I'm going to talk about one of them out of the 5 as a key moment. The other ones are not. And the one that's a key moment will be all capital letters. That's how I distinguish the difference when they pop up for tasks that are coming due. Okay. So I can see the importance of one versus the other. If it's all standard lettering, okay, standard case, okay, versus uppercase. Uppercase means that's one of my key moments. Now, here's what that would look like. Appraisal versus Breckheimer's appraisal is request that it's ordered. What does that mean? You may not do that. I do that. Once we're done with inspection, I don't care if I'm working the buy side or the sell side, buy side or list side. I'm going to reach out to the lender, copying everybody else in it, and confirm that we are past the inspection phase. We are moving forward. Can I get confirmation that we have actually, that the appraisal is being ordered? Number 2, can I get confirmation that it was ordered? Can I get confirmation that it was actually scheduled? Okay. Can I get confirmation that it's complete? And can I get confirmation that it's at value with no work order? And when it's at value with no work order, these are all key items, but they are not key moments. The key moment is once I get this. Now nothing more is required of me. That's in all capitals. Okay. So that's what a key moment is. The last thing is common question. How do I know or verify that my task list is state specific? The amount of times in the transaction coordinator groups on Facebook where people say, hey, does anybody have an example or a copy of a task list for, and then they list a specific state. I don't want a typical task list. I want one that's state specific to this. Okay. Now, do you need something that's state specific? We're not going to answer that right now. I'm going to answer that later because I'm going to deal with that in a whole section. Your task list, if you build your task list the way that I build my task list, it will be state specific. Okay. I'm not looking for a state specific task list. I know how to make it state specific. So I'll show you how I do that. Okay. So what is your homework? I think you kind of heard it. Okay. You're going to review multiple task lists. Now, I'm giving you the link to the Google Drive, but you also know that it's in the TC 101 toolkit. Multiple ways to do that. Then create your own task list based on the services that you want to provide. Look at multiple task lists. What you're going to learn is what are the services others provide? What's even available? Why do some people do this and some people do this and some people do this and other people don't? They wouldn't dream of doing it. Okay, such as drafting documents. Okay. Now, next one, build out your task list. And if I were you, I would build it out on the actual TC 101 toolkit. So you actually have it right in there for yourself. I already showed you multiple ways that you can do that, but that's where I would put it for now as you're building out your tools and systems. Okay. Next thing. If you're building it out in the TC 101 toolkit, it's already broken out into these 5 stages. But if you're not using the TC 101 toolkit where it's already broken out into 5 phases or stages, then if you're doing it on a Word doc, your own spreadsheet, or however you're doing it, then look at your full task list and make it very specific to what phase, what stage is each one in. There's a reason why you want to start seeing things in smaller, distinct parts. So we'll talk about that later. Okay. Next thing is, this is my opinion. Then the last thing I would do with that task list, I'd go back through that task list and I would make sure that I relabel every single task. Now, here's my equation for labeling that task. Let's highlight this so you can see the example. Okay. It's right here. Okay. Notice it says 3-APP appraisal add value with no work order, and it's all capital. So what is that formula? Number one, I start with what is the phase or stage? 3. Okay. 3 is that finance stage. Okay. Title and finance. The next, abbreviation for the parent category. Do I do that on every single task? No. Okay. I do that on tasks that I'm going to break into multiple tasks. So if I want to do appraisal, okay, and I want appraisal to be 5 separate tasks, I want to break it out a little farther, then I'm going to go ahead and put APP for appraisal so that I can see that these are all appraisal based. Okay. Now, you don't have to do that. Not everybody does that. I like that personally. Okay. The next thing is actual task name. So then draw out what your task name is. Determine how long or how short you want it, but it needs to be specific enough so you know what you're supposed to do and what you're looking for. The last thing is if that task is considered a key moment, not a key task, but that is the key moment, I would capitalize that. So now your task list not only is a task list of the service, but you also start seeing just at a glance what stage every task is in. What is a key moment and what isn't? Why does this become crucial? So here is where I wrap this up. If you're going to be using, now you can use, say, my free virtual whiteboard that's available to you. You could use open to close. You could use A-Frame, TC Docs, all these other transaction management tools. A lot of these tools, how they work is they're task list based. And when you come in the morning, the first thing, usually when you turn on your transaction management software, one of the first things it's typically going to show you, if you've never been in one, is all your tasks that are due. Now, for a lot of people, that's the first time at work that day that they cry. Okay, they get overwhelmed because there may be, if you're working on 30, 40, 50 files, 100 files, there may be 100, there may be a couple hundred tasks in there, and it gets overwhelming. Now, if you're not working quite as many files, maybe it might still be 30, 40, 50 tasks. So here's how I break that down, because anytime anything is overwhelming, I'm going to stop, I'm going to pull back, and I'm going to slow down, and I'm going to say, how do I break this into smaller parts? So here's how I do it, and I mean this literally. I look at this task list, which is a bunch of random tasks that are due today. I mean, I just walked in 5 minutes ago. How do I have tasks that are due already? So the first thing I do is I look for 1s and I look for 5s. Why? If it's a 1 is based on opening a new file. The only reason why there'd be a 1 there, because I didn't open up any new files today. That would be something that was left from a file I opened yesterday, and that would concern me. Because when I open a file, I don't do partial opens. I fully process that file, period. I fully open it, process it, and nothing distracts me while I do it. I don't open part of a file and then get distracted by an email, by a text, by anything. Nothing. Don't open a file unless you're going to finish it. Finish it, start to finish. I'm big on that one, okay? So here's the deal. If I'm going to fully finish it, but there's a 1 there, that means that that is something that I missed from yesterday. If I missed it from yesterday, when I send out that new file, that allows other people to start their work. Lenders, closers, attorneys, title companies, everybody else. Everybody gets copies of what they need, from the customers to the agents, everything else like that. So that means if there's a 1, I may have forgotten to do something, missed something or whatever that could be holding someone up from moving this file forward, and that's a problem. That's a huge problem. So the first thing I do is look at all the 1s. And if there are any 1s, I wonder why it's there, and I take care of my 1s first. Second one, 5s. Why? Because 5s are post-closing. Okay. Now, if it's a post-closing, it's 8, it's 9 o'clock in the morning. I haven't had any closings yet. That means that it's closing from yesterday. And if there's anything left, that means that someone could be getting held up from getting paid, or the file being proven compliant, or anything else like that that you're doing in post-closing. Okay. If you ever want to get fired, I mean, you want to get fired quick. Okay. You just really have a goal to get fired as quick as possible. Mess with someone's money. Okay. And messing around in post-closing and not getting their commissions right and processed ASAP and everything else like that, anything that would hold up someone's pay could get you fired now. Okay. So for me, I'm going to do my 1s so that everybody can move forward with the new file. I'm going to take care of my 5s. And the only thing that's left is 2s, 3s, and 4s. So now I'm going to look at my 2, 3s, and 4s, and I'm going to look to see if there's any key moments. How do I know it's key moments? It's capitalized. That's literally how I look at that task list. So it allows me to kind of calmly work through my task list. So I hope that helps someone. Okay. So that is going to be that section. Now, I was going to go through state specific, and here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a change on the fly right now. What we are going to do is we're actually going to take a break. And rather than continuing this video and making it an hour long, let's go ahead and let's just see how long this is so far. It's 30 minutes. Good. Let's do 30 minutes, and that's on that task list. Okay. Get your homework done. Now, instead of this being 1 of 4 videos, who knows? This might be 5, 6 videos, and I'll break it down in smaller sections. First video was a half hour. This one was a half hour. I'm going to move on to another video, and we'll break out the whole state specific question and a few of the other things that come after that in the next video. Hope this was helpful to you. Have a great day. Get your homework done. Talk to you later.